to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilmember
I'm here as far as I know.
Mayor Pro Tem Cruz,
Here.
Mayor Morgan,
Here.
Mayor Morgan, Councilmember Powers will be absent.
Okay. Public comment. This is for anyone who wants to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda. Larry.
This is on my agenda.
Oh, okay.
I talked about the general plan and our need to have annual reports on the progress that we're making, particularly in regards to housing and jobs. The county received theirs in February of this year, and in that statement says the state government code has recently initiated the requirement that a jurisdiction's planning commission file an annual report with both the Board of Supervisors and the State Office of Planning and Research on the status of the plan, the progress of its implementation, and its compliance with the general plan guidelines, among other things. Evaluation of the policies and the standards of the Lewis County general plan text will continue after adoption as a natural part of the day-to-day interpretation and application of its provisions by the staff and decision makers. It is likely that changing conditions and experience of policy implementation will cover a number of adopted policies and land use designations requiring modification and the need for written policies in additional subjects. Because the provisions of the general plan are designed for application to the development of the entire county, text amendments require careful consideration by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors of possible broader implications. The problem that we have in the city of Portola is we were incorporated in 1946, and prior to that time we had population growth, and since that time we've had a constant decline. This is what we're saying in our last amendment general plan. The growth rate anticipated in the original general plan 2020 has not been revised in the general plan update, although the city has not experienced any growth since 2000. Preliminary census figures have documented a slight decline in population from 2,287 in 2000 to 2,109 in 2010. The general plan update still plans to accommodate the future growth. Full development of all land use in the general plan study area would accommodate a population substantially larger than 5,678. However, the population growth anticipated in land use element can be accommodated within the existing city boundary if adequate land area is allocated and appropriate locations and necessary supporting land uses and infrastructure is available when needed. If additional land is annexed to the city, the potential population would increase in proportion to the development potential of the new land area. I'm looking at our policies that may have impacted it. I have a friend that just sold a property at a loss, and he's been here for 7 years remodeling black property. And he simply said, I'm here for 2 months of the year, yet I'm paying $720 in water and sewer fees. What we need to do is change the policy that we talked about earlier. This is Robin's saying that we're not doing assessments. These assessments is a standard way that we have of gaining long-term finances for it. And it also takes and designates the people that are benefiting from it that will be taxed on it. The current policy, you're creating a fee that goes far beyond the expense of it as we see in our budget, and yet we're trying to use it in lieu of an assessment. This is causing a lot of problems for our people with lower incomes. One of the areas that we look at that we made a policy to make it greater was that idea of taking it and taxing people on vacant properties that aren't in use. We could eliminate that, I believe, and still be within our operating costs, and that's where we should be when we have a fee. We shouldn't be making and charging more than is necessary for it to operate. I'm really concerned about the future because we keep looking at the debate that the county is having and trying to maintain quality personnel and still not run shortfalls. The only way we're going to do that is with more revenue and changing our policies that we find will work. I really think you have to, with a new council, a new mayor, and new mayor pro tem, really look at the general plan as your guide for the future and work on the two primary goals I look at is population growth and affordable public services. Thank you, Jim.
Mayor, may I clarify a couple of things here? Since the last meeting when Larry brought this up about an annual update, staff is looking and talking with other cities to see what they're doing, especially small cities. And as far as the water infrastructure, we just got informed today and have a questionnaire out by a group working with the Association of California Water Agencies, who was working with the State Water Resources Control Board to implement a statewide, small communities, low-income water rate reduction statewide, based on our demographics, our rate structure. So we might finally get to where you want to be, Larry, on that one. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Any other public comment? We'll close public comment session then and go to city communications. City council communication.
Not really a lot, ad hoc committee on big fixes, things, and I'm up to 35.5 hours of fire safe reduction, fire hazard reduction work.
Okay, Tom.
Since our last regular council meeting, I have attended a League of California Cities Mayors and Council Members Executive Forum. Sounds pretty impressive. It was a very impressive group, and one day, it was a 2-day program. One of those days was devoted in its entirety to city finances workshop. And I'm hoping that I've gained some good knowledge there, talking with other council members and mayors from around the state. And should I come up with what looks like a really good idea sometime later, I've probably stolen it from one of those people. Anyway, a wealth of experience there, and you can find cities with all of the problems that we have, and some that I'm glad that we don't have. So we're in good shape and better shape than some of those people, but I found it very useful, and I thank the council and the public for sending me to that meeting. I participated with Councilmember Oles in the ad hoc committee for developing a program of guidance for the big fish contract, and we'll talk about that later. That's the
Okay,
end of my report.
that's the end of yours, okay. Well, I attended 2 Railroad Days meeting. Things are coming along fine, and they have quite a few different activities going on and quite a few floats. What we're still trying to do is get more community involvement, and get some businesses and local groups to put floats in the parade. I rode in the Grable 4th of July parade. I attended the fire department beef feed and the concert in the park Friday night, which was very nice, and a good dinner and good company, and
Nice.
enjoyed it.
2 short additions, March with the American Legion and Great Eagle and Loyalton on their 4th of July thing.
Committee reports. Okay, city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few items. We just got notified from Cal OES that the February event is now covered through FEMA. So that means both 4801, 4803, which is the number FEMA has given them, will be reimbursed. We just don't know how much yet. They're going to come back up again and tour with the engineer and Todd. But it's moving. Hopefully these potholes will eventually get filled. That is, we can't call them potholes. They're
Store damaged travel ways.
something like that.
I think they call them washouts now, don't they?
Yeah.
Storm
It,
damaged washouts.
yeah.
Yeah.
Out of compliance infrastructure.
Hydrological interruptions of your road surfaces.
All of the above. So that's a positive. And finally, after about 3 years of pushing on this, staff had a conference call with the state regarding taking our 2014 failed community development block grant, $2 million sewer upgrade project, and turning it into a state revolving loan fund project. And through the severely disadvantaged communities program, they are coming up the week of August 7th to look at that project along with the arsenic wellhead issues we're having with the drinking water and Golden Springs and Joy Way and anything else. And they're going to do all the technical assistance pre-work, fund completely the work itself, and administer the program all through the state. So I think it's time to start getting our head around just redoing everything, if this relationship works out. The reason we picked the CDBG is because it was low-hanging fruit, shovel-ready, and just needs to have the inflation figures put in on the numbers. So that's very exciting. We also have state parks coming up next Thursday to reopen discussions with the city on potential OHV opportunities for staging area up above the ballparks. Citizens Committee has been formed representing, was Jeannie Gansby? No, Jan Brettwater?
Weiser.
Weiser, ooh, sorry. And Chris David from Dixon Realty, a guy named Berger from up at Gold Mountain who's helping him, Cal Patterson, myself, Todd Roberts, and Feather Publishing, looking at a mural on the wall where the bowling alley fire was. And you can see if you go by, folks are cleaning that up now as we speak. They'll probably be making a presentation to you. They're not asking for money yet. But and I don't think they anticipate it, but the city can maybe assist them with hauling away some of that stuff that's crumbling down. And Todd's already met with them, and it wouldn't be much. We've got a legal opinion that those kind of community development and beautification projects, even though it's on private property, is the city can participate, and it won't be a gift of public funds. And in this week's paper, these murals are taking off. This is in this week's Feather Publishing. Local artist places second in 24-hour mural marathon. These murals have become like annual events. When they redo them, people come and they bring their lawn chairs and food trucks show up.
Big thing in Sacramento, I know.
So if you take a look at this, there's one of these murals down at the bottom here, and you can't see it from here, but it's actually a railroad train locomotive moving through. So if you look at this week's paper, the Arts Commission's getting involved, and they have been given a slug of money through a donation into the hundreds of thousands. So the fundraising won't be as challenging, we hope, for this, but they're looking at a budget around $30,000 to $50,000 for this. So then I have an open letter to the council from Supervisor Sanchez, who couldn't be here this evening as the co-chair of the Portola High School Alumni Association. May I read it?
Sure, yes.
I wanted, on behalf of the Portola Alumni Association, to thank you all for allowing us to hold the last 3 annual alumni picnics at the Portola City Park and waiving the festival fees. Due to the harsh winter and extra cost incurred by the city to clean up the park, we decided not to request the fee waiver this year. The Portola Alumni Association presented a Pumas Bank check in the amount of $250 with a heartfelt gratitude for all the hard work staff has done to make our park beautiful again. Our picnic will be held Saturday, July 29th, and is open to the public. We will have great raffle and silent auctions items, as well as food and beverages, and a great venue for community fellowship. All proceeds benefit the PHS, Portola High School. The Alumni Association is proud to announce that in the last 3 years, and in great part to the generosity of the city of Portola, that 7 scholarships have been awarded to Portola High School graduates. Purple Pride Platinum membership at Portola High School is maintained at a cost of $250 annually. The Alumni Association Board donated $200 annually to hang our banner in the gym, sponsoring painting of the Block P with the freshman class. And I don't know if you've noticed that, but they went up there, and when they painted the P, they outlined it in purple. But you can't tell without binoculars.
Redoing the P's been an annual event since they put a P on that mountain.
Except for they just continued it for several years.
This is good.
And Mike is the one that reintroduced it.
They assisted Portola High School with incidental expenses totaling over $1,000. This year, in collaboration with the Rotary Club, a $1,000 scholarship will be awarded in August. At commencement ceremonies, the alumni coordinates sponsors activities for the Golden graduates to include passing out cold bottled water to guests at graduation totaling over 14 cases. Thank you, City of Portola, and go Tigers! That's from Michael Sanchez. And that's the end of my report. We do have a couple of short staff reports, starting with our community service officer.
Since we last met, I have abated 5 more vehicles. 4 of them were actually voluntary. I towed 1. I have the guys coming out again sometime this week to get 2 more. I'm up to about 192 cases now, of which about probably 70 are abated, so keeping on top of it, trying to.
Thank you for your.
And Melissa has one for you.
Okay.
So, at the last council meeting, you requested that we solicit letters of interest for the vacant council seat. We've received 5 letters of interest. The filing period for turning in a letter of interest closed today at 5 p.m. So at the next council meeting, we'll present you with the letters and you can interview the interested candidates.
Do they know that they're supposed to be?
I will make, the advertisement did specify that, but I'm going to call and contact all of the interested.
Do we want to make up questionnaires the next time, or
I believe you did last time.
the last couple of times?
But you the time before, for sure, and I couldn't remember how it happened.
Most
I
recent.
think we did, I could try and, I'll do an email out, maybe.
I don't think, nobody else applied when you applied for the last one, did they, Bill? I think you were the one. So, not for Phil, but I know for myself and.
Yeah, we did.
for-
I'll email that out to everyone.
I think it's a good idea to have the same questions available. I think it makes it sort of a level playing field to have some common questions.
Since we have 5 people.
Yeah, I agree with
Right.
that.
Yes.
So what you might do is, I heard the city clerk say that she'd go ahead and email out the previous year's questions, so don't reply to all. Maybe, review those. We can agendize the meeting, the next meeting, such that you can open the meeting by deciding what questions you'd like to ask, have some discussions among yourself, if there's 3 or 5 or 7 questions you want to ask, and then you can set it up that way and create the standard at that meeting, but not through email beforehand.
Okay. We will do that then. Any other communications?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we'll close that and go to the consent calendar. These items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. One is the minutes, minutes claims, and C is the fire assessment tax that's been on here for years, and we need to put that on the tax roll. So do we have any?
I move the adoption of the consent calendar.
Yes, Larry?
Regarding the resolution to put it on tax rolls, did it ever come off the tax rolls? Because from my understanding, it would be removed if the fire tax exceeded.
We're talking
If-
about the old one.
We're talking about the old
What
one.
I'm talking about, it's been taken, we've been active since '84.
But we've had to put it, renewed it on the file tax, I think, every year, right, Melissa?
Oh, does that have an annual renewal?
Yeah, the
Okay.
auditor requests that we indemnify them, and request that they formally place it
On the tax
Okay.
roll.
annually.
Any
Okay,
other
I'll second
questions?
that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and I think we need a roll call vote.
Councilmember
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cooley,
Yes.
Mayor Martin,
Yes. Okay. Sports success, review and discuss proposed independent contractor agreement.
Madam Mayor, we have a short staff report. As you will recall, we retained the services of Sports Success last year to do an inventory of appropriate properties, what we have, what we don't have, what we might have. Since then, time has gone by. The recommendations that Susan made, we've never really coalesced around. And so now we have some new opportunities and also the opportunity to continue and not turn the report into a coffee table item. It just gets shelved. So I'll let Susan explain. And you'll see that she has a short staff report. And you also have in front of you, should you choose to move forward, a contract for your consideration that has been approved and formed by your legal counsel.
I heard a great quote this week. It was that goals without action are wishes.
There you go.
So we put together that pretty comprehensive plan for you, and right about that time, the report came through on that was when we had the lovely FEMA now recognized event. And there was the grant meeting for the OHB as well as the deadline for the waterway grant that we had talked about. All of that came due. We were actually, the day the snow started, we were supposed to be down in Sacramento going through the OHB workshop to apply. So here we are now on a sunny day, talking about gathering the wagons again. So the two projects that we're talking about, looking at, both of which are what I would refer to as full grant opportunities. The OHB program is something that comes in as a fully funded program. They look at some of well, let me back up. The program is different every year. How much money is available and how it's structured is different every year. However, these two grants have been structured very similar, just with different dollar amounts available over the last 5 to 6 years of review. So the OHB grant, what we discussed was the property that borders the ball fields and the hospital, and then the forest on the other side, the creation of a staging area there, so that people can access the forest rather than riding the motorcycles in town, through town, all of that.
Have you talked to the Forest Service about that yet?
We did back when we started all of this before, about what that would look like and which roads were currently being accessed, and there's a Jeep trail actually. Dr. Simonson, when we were looking at this last fall, kind of brought in the photos and what was there. So there's a Jeep trail back in there that I guess is as technical but more picturesque, he says, than the Rubicon. And the program, in talking with the Forest Service at that time, and this is before our new manager had come on, those were one of the goals for the area, is to see things like what was developed in Tahoe happen. So it sounds like that is doable with them.
There's abundance of
Yeah.
trails already in place out through that country.
Exactly, yeah, that are appropriate. And then, we spoke, some of the things they look at that is like area stakeholders. So talking to Explorer, to Ken Smith over on the other side, being able to have a place that he could ride over the saddle there and come into the staging area, maybe have picnics.
The border
And then go
between
back.
Loomis and Tahoe, Susan, is just below the crest of Eckerd Peak on our side.
Yeah, so it's right in
Loomis
there.
probably easier to talk to than Tahoe.
Maybe, huh? So anyway, so that's one of the projects.
And if I may, check in with the Sierra Butte Trail Stewardship, we're doing the Beckworth Rim Trail. And they see this as perfectly compatible, even though the Beckworth Rim Trail will be non-motorized, single track. So,
And the beauty of this is that this particular grant not only pays for parking, it pays for restrooms, it pays for picnic areas, structures that are, you know, pavilions, things like that. When I spoke, the first kind of idea of this with the chairman of EPHC, because that's that parcel of land that they have, when Jake Scott and I talked about it, one of their questions was about a sound buffer. If people, you know, remember they're not gonna ride right there, they're just gonna get going and, you know, take off from there, but there will be. And so creating a buffer of open space in between, which as we've been looking at trying to get soccer fields put somewhere, a nice big grassy sound buffer that is put in as a sound buffer would be great. That maybe down the road could get stripes on it. So anyway, so that's kind of big picture on that. And as Mr. Meacher said, Mr. Sixto is coming up to take a look at that specific area with their team next week and go from there. Then the other grant,
and
yes,
if I may,
yes, please.
what's spearheading this is Tom Hayes came by the other day and asked me if I had any objections to them selling it. And of course, if they sell it, the city is owed some money, so, and his board of directors is all in with an OHV staging and sound buffer
The sound buffer.
as a compatible neighbor.
With some sidewalks that the long-term care people could go, and there was kind of a whole, I see how we could use this space. So that's that one. Then the waterway grant, its cycle opens in August and closes, the deadline is February 1. That has a couple different eligible grants that we would be able to do. One would be to create non-motorized launching stations at the West End Park. The funds from that will pay for restrooms, additional parking, fish cleaning station, and launch facilities. So, for instance, in a wonderful year like this, people that are putting it at Steel Bridge in the valley, we spoke back when Mr. Powers spoke with Feather River Land Trust about some partnerships looking at that and creating one of the water trail maps like what had happened over on Chester side of things. So those are some of the areas that scored in this grant. Is there community support? Have you reached out and looked at the different options that are available? Are there options like this already? Does it comply with the area, which the portion of our River to Wild and Scenic and Recreation portion, we were on the recreation portion. That begins just outside of Quincy and goes to the headwater in Sierra Valley. And part of the forest plan for that portion of the river is to have launch facilities, and there aren't any up here. So those are all compatible use. The match, there is not a match in that grant either, as they say, but there is a point system that permits if you have, if there's been local contribution to the project, then you get, there's a scoring, the scoring matrix, you get extra points. So I believe that we could put in the West End Park improvement that's happened already to show that the city has already invested in this particular site. And then on the outside, that something comes through the Forest Service on the MOU for the other side, then great, maybe we would look at that as the second year. I looked at who the recipients were of the grants this year. And Plymouth County received a couple little grants from them. They were small, but anyway, so those are the two specific that we're looking at right now.
Okay, any questions?
If they put in a west end, they can't go very far west before they get into really tough water.
Yeah, I think that they would take it as a take.
Come out down
And if there's a fish
the other
cleaning
end of
station.
Delica or something.
Yeah, fish cleaning station, they go in higher, maybe out in the valley and then fish it, come out the other side. So.
Well, staging a west end seems like a really good idea to me.
You said the magic word when you said restrooms.
Yeah, restroom, fish cleaning station, lunch.
So,
Could you repeat the dates of the application?
Yep, the application period will open August, it just says check back in August, and so it'll open in August, and then its deadline is February 1.
And that's for
The
the,
Water, Division of Waterway, and then the OHV cycle opens in January with the deadline of the 1st of March. Typically, the way that we want to perform on these, much like what we did with the grant for the disc golf, is to have everything all done as far as we can. And then when the review session comes up, or like with the youth recreation grant, when the review session comes up, we have a grant that is 90% complete. That we take that to those workshops and say, where are we missing something here? You know, how can we strengthen this project? How do you think this will score for each of these areas? And that gives us the window to run back and make any changes. You don't want to start the grant when the workshops occur and when the final thing is ready to go, so. And as we learned, like some of the stuff, scrambling for environmental neg decks and all that kind of stuff, the 11th hour, when quick grant turnaround stuff comes, right now we've got a little lead time on this if we execute this right.
so if the council would like to move forward on this, you have a contract for your consideration.
I think they're both outstanding ideas, and we should do those.
Okay, yes, Larry?
You know, I'm really pro economic development, and I believe in grants, but I'm looking at the contract as upfront of $2,500, and they may make this first, based on the hours long. Well, that's an open-ended contract, and at the same time, in the last contract, which was supposed to be seed money, that means it's a one-time, contribution to the business. I'm looking at, she started out $50 an hour, and that was gonna be $100 an hour. So are we looking at $100 an hour for the service?
It's the same, actually, no, before it was 100 as well, and this is the same structure. I'm giving back time, just like before, so it figures out to $50 an hour because I'm donating half of the time. So
Based
it's
on
the same.
$100 an hour?
Yeah, it's exactly the same contract.
Well, I'm looking at, I'm trying to see grassroots efforts of volunteers that can do a lot of these things and cut our expenses down. I'm looking at even big, if we could have a lot of these grassroots things done, eliminate some of that cost, that can be diverted to what would be a more expensive type of thing. I really would like to go out to the community to see if we can get this done on more of a volunteer basis. But I appreciate your effort.
Yeah.
To that point, Madam Mayor, we've had a lot of volunteer effort on the OHV side of this with Dr. Simonson.
Yeah,
He's put in numbers of hours. These sort of efforts tend to attract people with expertise that volunteer as we go through this.
Aliceburg is willing to help with the waterway, so we kind of had mobilized a few volunteer groups to be able to do a lot of the reporting legwork on this, so it wouldn't take as long.
And speaking of volunteers, Councilmember Bowles has put in priceless furniture that will go towards our points
That's true,
down at the
that's
park.
true.
So,
Custom
Customized.
artistry, artisan, hand-hewn.
Or
Exactly.
something like that.
worth a fortune.
Yeah.
But I did Jesus and I use machines. They don't gotta know
Still
that
have
though.
one.
So Larry's point's well taken.
Yeah.
We tend to attract the volunteers as we move through this, but somebody has to head it up that has some expertise in this area.
Well, you don't just go write grants, you have to know the verbiage and
Right.
everything else.
And every grant is
that goes-
different.
And as we know, that there's no guarantee that we'll get a grant.
No,
So if you
there's
just get
not.
expense and
Very true.
There's not. Any other comments?
I think I heard a question from Mr. Douglas on, is this open-ended somehow?
That's not.
And I think we just want to be sure that we know the answer to that question.
Well, we're saying 2,500, and the remainder dispersed based on the hours logged. That's open-ended.
It's 5,000 for 50 hours of services,
It
and then
says, exit
50 hours of
for
donation.
5 months.
I'm sorry, Larry, we made copies, we made revisions later today.
Oh,
So
okay.
we took out that piece.
Okay,
So
that's
the
wrong.
large packets that were out front didn't get the
Yep,
new
it was the
contract.
last one.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Here. $11 changes to the contract, you guys have that. So we did take out those 2 sections.
Okay, any other comments?
I'll make a motion to approve this contract.
I will second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Yes.
Is this included in the professional services that are already booked to 215?
Correct.
So we don't need a budget amendment? Okay, thank
Okay, next is, thank you, Susan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The ad hoc committee report, and we're going to continue that until August 9th, since Bill's not here. And you have something to say on that?
No, I was just going to request that we do that.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're
I was ahead of you.
well ahead of me, and that's just fine. Because we are looking, the ad hoc committee, which is comprised of Councilmember Olds and myself, is looking for further input and advice from the council, and at this point, we only have one member present in addition to the committee, so seeking a broader base of input, we would like to continue this item to our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Also interested in community input on this one.
Right. So, that will give us an opportunity to open that up.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll adjourn this then and have it put on the August 9th agenda. Next up, medical recreational marijuana cannabis. The county has put out a draft report on this. And do we have any discussion?
Well, Madam Mayor, council members, your staff, and your legal team all believe that we need to start the conversation, since we have until the end of the calendar year to make a decision and come up with our own ordinances or plans for the city. And seeing as how the county will be having a town hall on this on August 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Memorial Hall, we thought that this would be a nice kickoff where you could talk again amongst yourselves, recognizing there's only 3 of you here tonight, about any thoughts that you might have on the county ordinance and your own collective thoughts, individual. The only way you can discuss this is in a Brown Act situation, so we felt that this would be a good time to start, or not. It's entirely up to you, but we are encouraging you to start thinking about this. And though not here, Councilmember Powers did leave you a 12-point, there it is, thought about where we would go with this, and I would just receive and file it and try to digest it at your leisure. And we will probably be putting this back on your agendas again after, it might be on the 9th as well, after the county has met and you've heard from the community. So it's entirely up to you. We don't have any recommendations at this point in time. The county ordinance seems a little bit broad, to say
Does
the least.
anybody here know what the zoning codes are? The Rs and the Ms all that.
Well, one is residential, C is commercial. We don't have any agricultural, I don't think, here in the city. We have multiple, high density and low density and,
Medium density,
what
residential.
else is there?
Yeah, and even the
Anyway,
counties
Todd's
might be
got a
different.
map there in the back room that you can go back there and look and see, and it'll tell you what areas are.
I did do a little computer time this afternoon, looked all of that up.
Yeah, and I,
R's are rural, MR is multiple family, all the C's are commercial. Rec 1320 and 1112, that's all recreational, which is question mark on that one. That's all special use permits in the drought. Zoning clearances, suburban, rural, ag reserve, general ag, general forestry, mining projects.
so there is some information on the back page, but you need a magnifying glass to read it. But it does have zoning information in it.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Um,
Way too little for me, really.
I'll print you a larger.
Thanks. Well, it's entirely, but it's appreciated.
And, you know, we sent this to you at the end of last week. You may not have had time to completely digest all this. We're not asking that you approve or disapprove. It's just a starting point for a conversation. And you can talk about it tonight and again and again and again until we finally get to where you collectively want to go. And again, because you don't have two council members here, it's pretty hard for three of you to
Yeah, it was
give us
kind of,
direction.
Well, I personally think that we kind of have our own ideas, but I don't want to do anything until after the county has their meeting and we have all five of us together to go over it. But I mean, if we want to talk
this is
about it.
real important.
Mhm.
Decisions here will always affect the future of Portola,
As I was
whichever way we go.
telling staff earlier today, I was watching television program surfing after a ball game or something. And this program came up where they were talking about how marijuana will be used in floral arrangements. And I said, we have a lot of thinking to do here, if we're gonna be regulating florist shops for marijuana as a decorative item, but
Edible egg garden.
yeah. I said, that's just one more thing we have to think about.
Yes, Carrie?
Yeah, excuse me. I briefly read, this 40-page ordinances and everything, and from what I can see, it primarily addressed unincorporated areas, okay? I think the city should have its own ordinance for the city only, because a lot of this applies to commercial growing, and medical. I know that we're not allowed to have medical dispensary in Portola, is that correct? Medical dispensary in Portola. I'm talking about dispensaries. There's a ban 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Are you gonna change that?
Don't know.
We don't know.
Because they're talking about distribution, marketing, and growing and all the stuff, and I think they're addressing some that pertains to residentials, but I think a lot of this pertains to commercial growing, and my understanding is the Plumas County hasn't approved commercial growing yet, from what I understand. So I could be mistaken on that, but that's what I heard.
No, because that's what you have right there is a draft from the board.
Yeah, right,
That they are looking at.
But I believe that the city should have its own ordinance
But we will.
that pertains for the city only.
Well, if you decide not to, the state will regulate it.
The state will regulate it if we don't have our own ordinance. Yes, Larry?
If we even approve of the county, we can still revise that to our own conditions, can't we?
Yep.
So,
The
what
council
we're
could
trying
ban
to do
it.
is avoid the state regulation.
The council could ban it. You could just say, we don't want to deal with it, we ban it. I mean, the options are all over the map. I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Well, with Prop 64 in place, are we gonna ban it? They got a state law that says they can have
Well,
something.
banning certain, that's personal use grows.
Growth. This
But
would
you
be
could
the
ban
dispensaries and
dispensaries, you could
the
ban
commercial growing and,
testing facilities, whatever, distilleries or whatever they call them.
Distillery.
Yeah, well, they test their tester where they make oils and salves and,
I mean, you basically got cultivation, commercial and residential, or personal cultivation. Then you've got testing, which is a separate service
That's right.
associated with it. Processing, so taking cannabis
Entirely different.
and processing into various products. And then you've got delivery, potential delivery services, delivery within the community, home delivery, issues that you can regulate. So those are the primary areas that you're gonna wanna think about.
and dispensaries.
And dispensaries, of course, retail dispensaries for either medicinal marijuana or recreational or both, or, just one size fits all now because both are legal under California law. So those are the activities that you want to think about, whether or not you want to regulate. Cities and counties like the current law in that it allows the local jurisdictions to adopt their own regulations and to tailor their regulations to the community desires. One of the positions that is sort of against that, if you will, is the potential for patchwork regulation, from county to county, from city to city, to county, throughout the state. And so some would argue that that's a reason to have similar regulations, but you really ought to do what you think is right for this community. And to Terry's point, there may be less opportunities, less land use opportunities within the city for large commercial grow activities. There may be some opportunities, but there may be, less opportunities for commercial grow activities. But, looking at what the county's done, it's a tremendous amount of work and thought that's gone into it. And some of it may apply very well, especially with respect to commercial, personal cultivation. Some of those provisions might apply very well. So anyway, it's a lot to think about, but as Robert said, if we don't have an ordinance in place by the end of this year, the state will be able to issue permits for various commercial activities within the city. And that's what we're encouraging the council to think about, adopting some ordinance, even if it's to ban all those activities, so that you can't have commercial activities popping up within the city that you don't want to see.
Do we know yet the outcome of the trailer legislation? Has some of that been adopted or not?
It's still ongoing, some of it has. I've reached out to the league. Steve and I both, I forwarded it on to Steve.
Primarily addresses the areas of potential income.
Right, well, there's a concern that some of the trailer language will remove those opportunities for local revenue.
Do we have any tornado proposals inside the city limits? I think we do, they?
Just the one behind the hospital and Tiana Ranch.
Okay, Terry.
Okay, I know that the idea of marijuana is, for economic reasons and stuff like that. The residential marijuana business is a non-profit organization, and if you're not gonna have an ordinance that will control the residential growing in the city, how are you gonna get the benefits? How are you gonna tax them? I don't. Because it is a non-profit organization, and how are you gonna be able to control these people growing marijuana and be able to get some tax benefits from these people that are actually probably
You would have to have a commercial grow to do that. If somebody's growing marijuana for medical or their own personal use,
but not.
they can't sell it.
Yeah, they're not supposed to, but
They're not supposed to.
really. Okay, now
Well,
they're not supposed to be selling. Okay.
Terry, one of the things staff is looking at, even though we haven't been directed to do so, we have conversations. And one of the things would be is, just like a dog license, you need to license your grow so that we can regulate that.
Yeah,
There's
you have to
there's
regulate it.
regulation, and then there's the excise taxation
Yeah.
that you could do, but I don't think you can do that on the way Prop 64 is written on personal
use.
Not
personal
Not
use.
personal, no, not for personal
Not
use.
personal use, but where you can have
Ornamental.
regulations with the personal cultivation is to make sure there's compliance with the building codes. You know, electrical issues tend to be prevalent with this kind of activity. So that's one of the biggest areas of concern is, you know, consumption of electricity where it's not properly
Really?
built
and permitted, and there's risks of fire and that sort of thing.
And some jurisdictions have said, sure, you can grow your own pot, but you can't do it outdoors. You'll have to have an indoor grow with scrubbers, because you don't want to affect your neighbors with the odor.
That's right.
But as we know right now, the whole town goes kind of skunky in the fall here.
Yes, Larry?
We're talking about state regulations and county and city regulations. We're still dealing, we have a new president, and marijuana is not federally acceptable.
It's not.
What happens if he steps in?
I don't know.
That's a broader state issue, I mean,
And it's not just our state, because what is there, 4 or 5 states?
I know, but
now?
I'm looking at other states that are having trouble with it and regulating it, like Pueblo, Colorado. At a federal level, they can say, well, this will turn out to be a nightmare.
it still is, Larry, it's a nightmare right now because of the banking situation.
Yeah, I mean, they can't even, they have to do everything in cash basis.
They have to do it on cash, and that's what's helping the illegal side of it, so.
Yeah,
But we still need to, as a city, I think, take a positive step forward and draft up our own ordinances.
We don't want to do
You
the
should
state,
have-
and the state tell us what we have to do.
And by putting it on the agenda and perhaps directing staff to start formulating some ideas that are complementary to what the county's doing, so we don't stray too far from what Steve said. You don't want to have this huge dichotomy in how you're dealing with it. We can start bringing you that conversation more often.
Susan?
I just, as you guys begin to muddle through this and get to a place of clarity, just keep in mind, in the public meetings that were held before, I think that a lot of what I heard coming forward had to do with infringing upon the rights of others, so through, like you said, the odor of a grow, or it addresses consumption locations, on-site consumption places, things like that in here. So thinking of how you'll address those and be able to mitigate the concerns that were raised as a result of the comments that happened before. And then also the location of those items, like I was looking on here, it says they lined out not more than 100 feet from a residence, a dispensary, and then 600 feet from a school. 600 feet, really, guys, is not that far, but I don't know how far is it from Commercial Street to the high school. I mean, it'd be interesting, just things like that, like,
40.
yeah, like, yeah, see, like, so maybe just as you do that, take some real time applications of creating some circles of what does this mean, you know, where is this putting kids, and I would encourage you to broaden it from there, because you have the skate park here that's used by kids. Where are there public areas where, you know, people that are maybe gonna be more negatively impacted by it versus adults making safe and sane choices for themselves, you know, at the end of the day,
Well, and I
so.
think when you read in there too, one place it says from schools, but then another place that said that they should go from the school boundary lines, because if you just say from the school, what's
Yeah.
the school? Is it the football field out there?
Mhm.
Or the baseball field, or what else? So there's a lot of things to think
Right.
about before you.
Yeah, children's playgrounds, like, we're such a small, everything's so close together here that what does make sense, and how do we create those areas, or do we say there just isn't a place for this type of action? So anyway, I just thinking of what everybody had before, and then my work with kids,
Yeah. Susan,
I've been to Colorado
skate
Springs
park,
a lot. It's-
Volleyball court, tennis, or tennis
No
court, and
boundaries.
a basketball court.
yeah, just, that's all
They
I'm
need to be
asking, think
protected,
about those
just
things.
not, so there's a lot of kids hanging out there.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because we don't have ordinances about alcohol and tobacco consumption in the parks,
Right.
you know, and this is now legal. So how do you crack that one?
Yes,
You know, it's a
Gary.
whole new world we're living in. Does somebody say, okay, I can't smoke pot, how come they can smoke tobacco? That's a controlled substance. Alcohol's controlled. Why do we sell beer in the park at events? We have to get our head around this is a new world we're living in. And the distance from the ball yard, from the tennis court, was less than 500 feet.
Yes, Gary.
One more thing, I've been talking to some realtors, and that would be a concern for them because they would have some kind of disclosure if they're selling a home and there's a marijuana grower right next door. The buyer should be able to know that that house exists right there. So that's gonna be a concern for the realtors, I think.
Yeah?
If it's permitted, then would the permits be public record?
Yes.
So there you go.
But the council has to direct us that they want to have these sort of permits like dog licenses. I think it's a good idea.
Then you can-
Something that you need to consider is the enforceability of it.
Right. It all
Okay.
goes with
That's right.
that.
Especially if I'm gonna be the one doing it.
Well, and technically, the fee-based structure, right, is intended to support
Offset
the
those
enforcement.
costs.
Yeah, that's the,
However,
that's what they're selling.
if we differ our municipal code that far from the county,
Right.
when we have the county providing law enforcement anyway, that's gonna get a major problem going because the officers are gonna be trained one way and then we want it done different.
That's the reason for us looking at this as we go forward to make sure that we don't get too far.
I think we should re-agendize it to next meeting.
Yeah.
And I might add that I'm already getting complaints.
Question for you, Steve, public meeting, we can't all go together, right, but we can all go.
You can all go, just
Yeah, separately.
don't ride together.
Don't ride together, don't huddle together, talk about city business together, or how that program, whatever you discussed at that meeting, how it affects the city. Don't talk amongst yourselves about that, except as part of the program. I mean, if you're taking public comment and you want to say, okay, we're concerned about this, we'd like to hear from folks within the city how you feel about it, that's fine.
And to ask questions, you can all ask questions.
How are you responding now to those complaints?
Well, unless I actually see it, there's not a whole lot I can do. If they're having an indoor grow, I don't have to get a search warrant to go in the house. So, but right now I have a lady in a duplex, they're growing it upstairs and she can smell it downstairs. What do you do? I mean, I can fill out an affidavit for a search warrant, but it's not against the law anymore. So, I'm kind of stuck between a catch-22.
The only way you can do it is call the feds.
They won't do anything, you know,
For sure.
except spread the seed around with a helicopter, which I've seen 1,000 times.
I look forward to the county's public meeting and seeing what people have to say there. And my fond hope is that we can be as close as possible to the county's ordinance
Hopefully our
for
board will
ease
do
of enforcement, for one thing. I grew up in a town that was, gosh, I don't know at the time, but it may have been 30,000. It was a suburbia kind of a town, and in the interest of protecting the morality of the college students there, the town was dry. And this was into the early 60s, it was still dry, and I can tell you it doesn't work.
Convenience store just across the line.
That, I think, will guide my thinking too.
Is that in here or outside?
That's
outside again.
Somebody's.
Carnival.
Okay, any more discussion on this?
Actually, mine, I guess it's mine.
Like me,
I think we'll agendize it for the next meeting.
Okay,
Okay, we go into closed session.
as indicated on the agenda, yes?